everybody, and welcome to the inaugural episode of Fandom Empire Presents Flix Busters. We're going to be having a really great time on this show, talking about whether the films of the show are going to be a flick or a bust, hence the name Flix Busters. I'm Zach, and I'm here with Shawn, and we have been on several different shows together over the years. And this one, in my opinion, is right up there with the fandom fraternity and Call the Banners as far as the uniqueness and the potential goes. And to be able to incorporate a lot of nostalgia and some great discussions, even tangent-filled rant segments are on the docket tonight. This is going to be a really fun show, and I'm excited to be on this adventure with you, dude.
I'm stoked to be here. Love the color schemes. I know we talked about it a while ago now. We've been in the works on this for a little while now. And the more I look at it, I think you mentioned earlier today, the more you look at it, the more it grows on you. The more I look at it, the more it grows on me too. And, you know, given the name and the color scheme, it's probably not entirely hard to see what we're going for. I won't say it, but if you see it, great. If you don't, then it is what it is, but I'm stoked, man. Let's talk movies.
Yeah, for sure. And we've got a really great docket for you all. We're basically recording a couple of episodes every couple of weeks to be able to pump out regular content for you all. But we wanted the very first episode to be a live one, and it's going to be one that is super relevant. We're going to be talking Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, but we're going to be having multiple choice questions. We're going to be incorporating a new hashtag for y'all. Like I mentioned, there's going to be a rant segment. We're going to talk some relevant news like Superman and Deadpool. We'll have a very small Q&A segment, and then the main event will be talking about the final installment of the Indiana Jones franchise. And at the end of it all, we're going to have a verdict. We're going to be putting movies on trial of sorts here on Flixbusters, where we kind of use a very deliberate process to try and determine whether we think a movie is a flick or a bust. And we have a criteria. We have a special criterion in place where a film has to reach a certain percentage before we can declare it a flick. And if it reaches a very high percentage and it's something that we really feel is deserving, then it gets inducted into the Flixbusters Hall of Fame. Don't know if Dial of Destiny is going to make it into the Hall of Fame, but I do think it is a very fun summer movie. I'm not going to call it a flick because we haven't determined that yet, but it's a very fun summer film that I'm pretty stoked to talk about, along with everything else that we've got on the docket tonight. We're going to kick things off, though, with a multiple choice question for those of you who are in the chat. I see several people that have been waiting. We appreciate your patience, and we're going to hopefully reward some of that by asking you all something live right here, right now. Which Indiana Jones movie is your favorite? There's 5 to choose from, obviously, with Raiders of the Lost Ark, Temple of Doom, Last Crusade, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and ultimately, The Dial of Destiny. We're going to read those responses as quickly as we can before we move on to the next segment. And it's going to be a tough one because this next question is going to be one that puts you on a budget and is going to make you choose some stuff that maybe you don't want to choose. And we're going to have one of those types of questions every single episode, whether they're live or pre-recorded. We're going to have these types of multiple choice questions where you can find us on social media. We're going to have these budgetary type questions that we're going to pitch to you all. And we'll see where it takes us. But we've already got some responses in the chat, which is awesome. Matt Whitfield says it's The Last Crusade. Who else have we got? Jack Heim joining us from Evansville, Indiana. Raiders of the Lost Ark is my favorite. Jesse's Storytime Spectacular says Temple of Doom. Steven Schinder says Last Crusade. Jesse Bennett says Raiders is number 1. It's close with The Last Crusade right behind it. And of course, Steven, always with the jokes. If Goonies or Tintin is an option, then he's going to go that direction. Already kicking it off with some hilarity on the show, and it's always fun when we get a lot of varying opinions, and we've got pretty much a pretty wide spectrum. Raiders, Crusade, and Temple of Doom even getting votes. Shawn, what gets your vote?
It's The Last Crusade, man. Harrison Ford and Sean Connery together in 2 hours of glorious fun from 1989. Sign me up.
I watched it recently during a series of rewatches that I did just so that I could prepare myself for Dial of Destiny and be able to compare and contrast. I did really enjoy Last Crusade, but I think there's just something special about Raiders of the Lost Ark, the thing that started it all, the adventure that it takes you on, the romance that's incorporated into it. It's something really special, and I have a hard time dethroning it. So I think Raiders is going to take the top spot for me. But go ahead and follow us on Flixbusters and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already to Fandom Empire. And you can get alerts for when these shows are going to be published, when they're going live, and you'll be able to see these prompts before anybody else so that you can submit stuff for pre-recorded content. We'll put it out there a day or two maybe before we actually record so that you all can submit those comments that way. Jack says Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was the first one that I saw on the big screen. My condolences. Oh, so we're not going to get the horn for that. Okay. I see how it is, dude. So some other things that wow. Thanks. Appreciate it.
You're going to want to give me that horn in a bit.
Oh man, I don't know if I do or not. Let's go ahead and get into our next question. Hopefully some of you already know about hashtag FlixPix from social media, but if you don't, we're hoping to make this our new official hashtag, particularly when it comes to these budget questions. We're going to give you all $15 to work with, but there's some really, really tough choices for Harrison Ford films, ranging all the way from $5 down to a single dollar. And you've got to spend that $15 however you see best fit. We've already gotten some responses. I'm hoping we get some more here in the chat, but people's hashtag FlixPix for Harrison Ford movies. Obviously, Dial of Destiny, one of Harrison Ford's most recent pictures, might be one of his last ones, depending on when he's ready to hit retirement. But it's going to be an interesting discussion to see how this $15 gets spent. Shawn, did we already get some responses like from some of our Fandom Empire members? I see Shinder actually already commented. He's here live in the chat, but he submitted Blade Runner, Empire Strikes Back, and Last Crusade. I'm pretty sure those are all at the top level there. So he spent his $15 on just those three and called it a day.
I should also add quickly here, when you guys are spending this money, try to fake money, obviously. Try to do it under the pretenses that when you make these picks, so for this episode, it's Harrison Ford movies. Once you buy these movies, you don't get to see any other Harrison Ford movies for the rest of your life. So I would think that might change some people's opinion on what they pick. That's different than going and renting a movie on a Saturday night or a bunch of movies on a Saturday night, returning them on Sunday and renting a bunch of new ones the following weekend.
Right. Look at Jack already using the hashtag in the chat. Appreciate that, man. Thanks. Blade Runner, Empire Strikes Back, Witness, and Raiders. I think that's over budget, isn't it? Blade Runner, Empire Strikes Back, and Raiders is the full 15, so I think Witness would take you over budget. Yep. Raiders, Blade Runner, and Empire. Well, we'll just give you those three because that's all the $15 can afford.
Not
but
Witness.
man, that it's so not easy. It's so not easy.
A guy we used to do some shows with, Johnny, who's worked with us on various projects, had said to me, I didn't pass this message along to you, but that this list is crazy and totally unfair.
I mean, it's hard to disagree. It's very hard to disagree. Matt Whitfield in the chat, Empire, Crusade, Witness, and Frantic. So that's a full use of the 15 right there. We appreciate that. Steven says, I choose what I consider to be the best. So if it's the best that he has to offer, spend the 15 on the best that he has to offer. And I kind of did something similar, but I don't know. I tried to go down the line from like a 5, a 4, a 3, a 2, and a 1, but that may not be the case for every one of these that we do. But I don't know, man. What other submissions did we get? I saw some other names in those screenshots that you posted. I didn't get to go to all of those. Wayne says, Dial of Destiny will not be the last indie movie, no matter what they say. They will make one last movie set in 81, making Indiana Jones's adventures end the very same year they began for the fandom. I'm not sure if that's going to happen or not. If it does, it's going to be interesting to see how they try to do that. Steve Ross says Empire, A New Hope, The Fugitive, and Patriot games. Is that within budget? I'm not looking at the budget every single time, but I feel like it is. So
It is. It is. I'm pretty sure.
Just fitting in that $15 budget there with oh yeah, I see. Fugitive is 4 and Patriot games is 1. Okay. Nicely done. Is it time for our list then?
I believe so.
Okay. Do you want to kick it off or do you want me to?
I'll take it. So for me, I had The Empire Strikes Back, which I consider to be the greatest movie ever made. I'm buying that one. I'm going to be on an island with movies and can't watch anything else. I also picked The Force Awakens, Blade Runner 2049, which I think is criminally underrated. A Devil's Own with Harrison Ford and Brad Pitt. A lot of people haven't even heard of that movie. Really good movie. And I took Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Did you really?
I did, because it's cheap and I want to be able to watch an indie movie.
Okay. A cheap indie movie. I see where your standards lie. So interestingly enough, I too got Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Honestly, here's the thing, dude. Harrison Ford is not what's wrong with that movie. There are some things about that film that are not great. Harrison Ford is not one of those problems. I enjoy the way that he plays the character in Crystal Skull. I watched it. I did a rewatch getting ready for the Dial of Destiny discussion, and I enjoyed Harrison Ford in this movie. I didn't necessarily like the interdimensional beings that the creatures turned out to be at the end of the film, but I enjoyed Harrison Ford. So I spent $2 on that. I spent $3 on Blade Runner 2049. I spent $4 on American Graffiti. I love American Graffiti. And it's a supremely underrated movie, and it's one of those things that got Harrison Ford into the business, got him that notoriety, got him that role in Star Wars, and it was a really, really good film, and it's got Ron Howard in it too. Before he was Richie Cunningham on Happy Days, great soundtrack. If American Graffiti doesn't work, Star Wars doesn't work, and if Star Wars doesn't work, Indiana Jones doesn't work. So, there's a lot to be said about American Graffiti kicking off Harrison Ford's career and kicking off a lot of great franchises. And then this might be a little bit of a hot take, but I actually took Raiders of the Lost Ark. I love Empire Strikes Back. I've got its poster hanging up in my office right now. I'm looking at it. But Harrison Ford is not what makes Empire Strikes Back great. And I want Harrison Ford movies. And I'm taking Raiders because it is one of Harrison Ford's best roles. And then I had $1 left over. Nothing really on the dollar list looked all that appealing. I don't really care for Rise of Skywalker. I don't really care for the holiday special. Wasn't interested in Patriot games. So that kind of narrowed it down to Hollywood Homicide and Cowboys and Aliens. And I went with Cowboys and Aliens. So I actually went 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 on this and went Raiders, Graffiti, 2049, Crystal Skull, and Cowboys and Aliens.
So Hollywood Homicide is actually a little fun movie with Ford and and Josh Hartnett, which I enjoyed quite a bit. I agree with everything you said on American Graffiti. It's a movie you and I have talked about before. It's fantastic. I knew as soon as I put it in that $4 price range, I was not going to be able to afford it.
You're not paying for it. Well, that's okay. I'll pay for it. I can swing for it. I'm good with it. But yeah, that is Flix Picks, folks, and it's not an easy subject. Some people say it's downright impossible. And we'll be pitching you a $15 budgetary question for every Flixbusters episode that we do. So get used to it and get used to making these tough choices, because it is going to be a regular thing here on the show. And be sure to use hashtag FlixPix, FLIXPIX, on different social platforms. Right now, we're primarily on Twitter, but we're getting other pages as well. So be sure to join us there. Be sure to join that hashtag so that we can follow along. If you see something that you want to be incorporated, then let us know and use that hashtag. Jesse Bennett finally got around to taking a look at the list and says, I got my pick in. I'm going to take everything that's in the $3 bin. Interesting choice, Jesse. You get 5 movies that way, so you get a lot of variety, but you're going to be getting Dial of Destiny, 42, Blade Runner 2049, Witness, and Force Awakens. Honestly, that's not a bad list.
No, you can't really go wrong, in my opinion.
You get a little everything. You get Star Wars, you get Indy, you get Blade Runner, and then you get a couple other films as well. That's a really nice ensemble as far as picks go. So I have a hard time judging that one, Jesse. Good pick. Okay, it is time for another element of the show that is so stinking brand new. We have never done it in the history of any of our shows before. You and I have hosted several Game of Thrones podcasts. You and I have hosted a couple of different sci-fi movie review, fandom review type of podcasts before. I want to say you and I have collectively done like 5 different shows. This is like our 5th or 6th show. Am I wrong in thinking that, Shawn?
It's around there for sure.
It's somewhere along that line. And never in the history of our collaboration have we done this segment before. So I'm kind of excited, but also a little bit nervous. It is time for a Flixbusters original segment entitled Don't Get Me Started. Don't Get Me Started is basically an opportunity that we're creating for ourselves to let loose on a tangent and give ourselves a specific time to actually let loose and talk about something pertaining to whatever the subject matter at hand is. So, for example, tonight's Don't Get Me Started segment is going to be talking about the different types of villains that exist in the Indiana Jones franchise. The benefits of having Nazis as the primary villain, or having some other form of villain in the movie. We have Russians and we have, cultists from India, but 3 of the movies out of the 5 of them now have had Nazis. So we are going to allot ourselves 90 seconds each to go on a tangent about either the benefits or the detriments of having Nazis be the bad guys. Shawn, I've got 90 seconds on my timer for myself. I'm going to try to regulate myself as best as possible. Are we ready to try this out? I'm a little nervous.
I'm ready.
Oh, man. All right. My 90 seconds begins now. So my argument is going to be in favor of having Nazis as the primary villains. I have no problems with the cultists that we had in the second movie. I have no problem with the Russians that we had in the 4th movie. But I think there is something classic about having something like a Nazi as the primary villain. you have the opportunity to showcase people like Hitler, like they did in Last Crusade, but you also have the opportunity to find like a common enemy, find a common thread. Nazism is something that exists today still. And so to have the opportunity to watch your hero character punch an antagonizing type of personality that you have in these movies, it becomes almost a part of the franchise. It becomes a part of who Indiana Jones is. Yes, he's a decorated soldier. Yes, he fought in wars other than World Wars 1 and 2. But to see him constantly ending up face to face with something as terrible as a Nazi, it just makes sense for the character. It gives you that very obvious thread between good and evil and gives you an opportunity to know beyond a shadow of a doubt who it is that your hero is fighting and what they are fighting for. It's a little more ambiguous in some other circumstances, but when it comes to Indiana Jones versus Nazis, there's almost no comparison. And I'm ashamed to think that people think that there is. It's frustrating, and I don't get it. So just don't even get me started.
Well done. Well done. I'm not sure what the fallout of this is going to be, but well done.
I went about 7 seconds over, so I don't know. I need to work on cleaning up my conclusion of the argument, but we'll get there. It's the first episode. So, all righty. Your 90 seconds on this subject, uninterrupted, begins now.
So, I don't think the villains in Temple of Doom work. And I don't think the villains in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull work, despite me picking it in my Flix picks. I don't know if it's a casting issue, a writing issue, or what, but the villains in both of those movies, I don't have any. Like, Mads Mikkelsen is one of the villains in Dial of Destiny, and none of the villains in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull or in Temple of Doom bring what he brings to the table. However, I'm deeply disappointed that, for me personally, this franchise fails to provide another interesting villain. I feel like the only reason that they went back to doing the Nazis, other than obviously it was the right time to do it in terms of where the story takes place, but it's what's worked for them. If you were to look at the 4 films that came out before this 5th one, and you said, okay, rank these ones from really good to not so good, on 90% of lists, you're going to see Temple of Doom and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull at the bottom of those 4 movies. I just think it's a complete lack of imagination on Lucasfilm's part, and it's not just a Star Wars thing. I think there's an issue there. I don't know what it is. I'm not claiming to know what it is, but it's time to fix it. Don't even get me started.
So that's how we're going to try to conclude our arguments. Is we state our case, we do it in a very specific time frame, and we try to end it by saying, just don't get me started. Don't try to get me started. Poor Jesse. I would end up forgetting about the timer and talk about something random. Yeah, I'm literally like sitting with it in front of me on my phone using a stopwatch method so that the alarm doesn't go off and interrupt the show. Jack says, I enjoyed Nazis as the villain and the originality going to be the villains for Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, but they decided to make the Russians the villains. You know, that's something that Shawn touched on. It's a complicated decision-making process, and those decisions have been made, and they're going a direction that, you know, it's going to go. And we'll see how we end up ranking this film when we dive into the subject matter, which we're very, very close to doing. I believe we don't have any other matters of business to attend to unless I'm forgetting something in the timeline. It may actually be time to dive into Dial of Destiny, is it not?
No, we got some news to tackle.
We do. See, that's my thing. I wasn't looking right at the story lineup, and for some reason my image went away from me anyways. So that's why there's 2 of us on this show, because we do have some Superman Legacy stuff to talk about. We're going to have a little bit of a news element, but you know, it'll only be like 1 or 2 highlighting things to talk about so that we can get into the subject matter. We have enough time for the subject matter before we move on. But yeah, Superman Legacy has officially tapped David Corenswet and Rachel Brosnan to play Clark Kent and Lois Lane in the Legacy film. I really don't know the background of either of these actors. I haven't really done a whole lot of research on them. Shawn, I'm hoping you have, because I don't know what to make of this casting. I don't know if I have feelings on it one way or the other just because I don't know them, and maybe that's a good thing.
So I don't know them. I understand that the actor playing Clark and the actress playing Lois have some sort of history together. I don't know what it is. I don't know if they're friends or if they've worked together, but I do know the people they've cast have history together, and there was a reason for that. Actually, the main reason why I wanted to discuss Superman Legacy for a bit is obviously the quote unquote reset of the DC franchise, and given these the issues at the box office as of late, just gonna throw this out there, man, and say I don't know if now is the right time to be making another $200 or $300 million before marketing Superman movie. I love Guardians. I loved his take on oh my god,
Suicide Squad?
Yes, that's it. I haven't seen the Peacemaker yet.
Oh,
Yeah, I know. I've heard
dude,
it's really, really, really good.
dude. If anybody would enjoy that series, it would be fucking you.
So like I totally believe in James Gunn. I just think this is the wrong time to be investing billions into superhero movies, because at the moment it's not even going good for the company that has done them typically far better than DC has recently.
Yeah, well, their parent company is having issues, and that's something that we're going to have to touch on in another episode that we don't really have a whole lot of time for tonight. But Disney as a franchise has been pouring money into stuff that has not been yielding great dividends. But it's not to say that DC's doing much better. I mean, take a look at Black Adam. Did not have a great showing. What was it? Shazam 2 did not have a great showing. I really don't have very high hopes for Blue Beetle. I think it'll be a cult favorite, but I don't think it's going to be a financial success.
Flash
So,
is going to lose a ton of money as well.
yeah. Yeah. So DC's not in all that much of a better boat, if we're being completely honest. But I did take a look at the article that you sent me from Deadline that was talking about this casting announcement and when the movie is expected to be released and stuff. Um, Brosnahan is from Amazon's The Marvelous Ms. Maisel, which I've heard has won several awards, has been critically acclaimed. Fans really, really enjoy it when they watch it. I've never seen a single episode. So I really don't have a great view of either of their acting chops, but I do think it'll be nice to have like this blend of, yes, I've got acting experience as Ms. Maisel. Yes, I've got acting experience from XYZ, but it's not mainstream. It's not something that everybody has seen. So you have an opportunity for a clean slate and a fresh set of eyes, in addition to being able to back somebody up with some of their acting credits. I think it's a good blend and could yield some pretty good results. I I don't think James Gunn really loses money all that often. You take a look at the stuff that he makes and he finds a way to get people to go to the theater and support his stuff. So I'm gonna keep my fingers crossed for now and say that he's able to do the same thing with this.
Well, I certainly hope so. It'd be nice to see. I don't know how I feel about the whole reset and all that stuff.
I was
Quickly,
never a I'm gonna put in a little hot take here. It's not a rant, but I'm gonna put in a little hot take. I was never a fan of Henry Cavill. I was never a fan of the way that he presented his character or the opportunities that he had to expand his character. Um, I just I never bought into him as Superman. So I'm really not as butthurt as other people might be over having somebody else playing Clark Kent.
I'm a Smallville guy anyway, so like for me, none of this stuff compares to the show. So you spend 200 episodes with characters, it's hard to have a equal impact in 2 hours. Quickly here before we get to Indy, I just got to know, man, what are your thoughts on this Deadpool 3 photo that Ryan Reynolds put out yesterday?
I really love the Deadpool franchise, and I really love the Wolverine franchise. And this Wolverine costume is very in line with the comics. It's very in line with the animated TV series, which is something we've never seen on Hugh Jackman before. So I think it's got a ton of potential, not only to be true to the comics, but potential to be really comical, like funny, because Deadpool has made fun of his own suit before, and I think he's definitely going to make fun of Wolverine's suit. And so I think this picture alone lets you know that it's trying to be truthful to the source material, that it's going to have opportunities for some really funny jokes, and they just seem really happy to be there. I know that they're kind of in character, but there's just something about that picture that tells me they're happy to be on set and they think it's really cool that this is their job. They get paid to dress up in costumes like that and be characters that are just iconic right now. And I think it's got a lot of potential, and this one picture is making me excited too.
Well, I mean, we all know they backed up the Brinks truck to get Hugh Jackman to come back after he said he was done. I think it's fitting that if you were going to come back, that you should come back in the costume that you never worn, yet the character is known for. That was kind of like a must for me. And like if you're going to go out, if this is really going to be the end of Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, then he should be in that costume.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I I like the photo. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words, but I'm not going to actually spend 1,000 words trying to dissect this picture. The long and short of it is, I'm happy to see it. Jack thinks Deadpool 3 is going to be a great movie. I love it. It's going to be true to the comics. I think it will be, for sure. Okay. I believe that's all we've got for news. Am I just that excited to talk about Dial of Destiny? I guess we'll find out. But it is officially time. So let us know in the chat what your thoughts are, what your initial impressions are of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Some people already commented it towards the top of the program, but we've had some really great engagement in the chat already. So it may have just gotten by us, but let us know your thoughts. If you've got a sentence or two that you want us to try to highlight, we'll try to bring it up over the course of the discussion here. But Shawn, I'm curious. You talked a little bit in one of the earlier segments about Mads Mikkelsen, and it makes me think that perhaps you have some very positive things to say about this movie.
You would be wrong.
Okay, so you like Mikkelsen, you just didn't like everything else.
Yeah, Mads is very good in this. I don't know much that Mads isn't good in. I feel like when Mads shows up on any
Doctor
set,
Strange.
I haven't seen Doctor Strange in. Oof.
Doctor Strange is just not a good movie, dude. Doctor Strange is bottom 3 Marvel movies. It sucks ass. There, I said it.
No, I think that look, I don't hate the movie. I'm not going to come on here and bleep all over the movie. It's not like that for me at all. But I think that the movie has some very, very significant issues. Do you mind if I just get right into it?
Yeah. We'll just give people a spoiler warning right now. We're gonna be talking the ins and outs of this film. So I think there's certain pieces of this film that we can take away happily, but then there's other pieces that we're probably going to take a dump on. So prepare yourselves, people, because we are film critics, and there's a good chance we might be somewhat critical of this film.
Yeah, the one thing I'd say is we're not just going to come out here and give every single film that we talk about a gold star. Some films might be great, some might be terrible. Zach might make us watch Zombies. Guess what? That's not making the Hall of Fame. So, yeah, I mean, I haven't seen the sequel yet. God forbid that happen.
It's
But
not that bad. It's pretty bad, but it's not that bad.
look,
I'm more excited for Velocipaster 2.
oh my God. I wanted to be excited for this film, and I was excited for this film. And the first concerning thing I saw was, why the hell is this movie 2.5 hours long? And I thought going into it, okay, there's going to have to be just some crazy shit to justify that runtime. And to be honest, I really like the third act of the movie. I think it's by far the strongest act of the movie. Look, the movie's too long. It drags. I don't know if 80-year-old Harrison Ford works for me. I know he's not playing an 80-year-old Harrison Ford. Pardon me. I don't know if 80-year-old Indiana Jones works for me. This was by far the most limiting he has been in that role. And I think, he definitely, I know there's people out there that want to push the agenda that he took the back seat and it was, Phoebe's movie. And that's just not the case at all. It was definitely still an Indiana Jones movie. It was just a different Indiana Jones movie. And I appreciate what they tried to do for the first act with the CG scene. I do. But if that scene told you anything, it's the technology is still not there to be that front and center all the time, because I leaned over to Jade and said, as we're watching it, I feel like I'm watching Indiana Jones in a really good graphical video game played out in a live action scene. And it's one thing to have Luke Skywalker pop up in 5 minutes of Mando, or 2 minutes of or 5 minutes of Book of Boba Fett, 2 minutes at the end of Mando season 2. It's a whole other beast to put this thing out there in IMAX, nonetheless, and have that front and center for 20, 30 minutes. The technology is just not there yet, man. That said, I didn't mind that scene, but at the end of the day, this film just feels way the hell too long for me. And I also found myself sitting here watching this film going, what is the purpose of this film? Every film should have a purpose. We're going to talk about a film next week, Titanic, which its purpose is literally real life. I'm sitting there watching that movie 2/3 of the way through going, there's a level of this that feels like The Rise of Skywalker to me, and I don't like that. And I never thought I would have said that about a James Mangold film, but this feels like it has Disney meddling all over it again.
I would say that opening sequence doesn't do it for me. I would go that far, because they take his little bag off of his head, and it's almost supposed to be like a big reveal. It's like, ta-da, look what we can do. He's young again. But they used 80-year-old Harrison's voice. And he sounds like a scruffy, scraggly, decrepit old man in a 30-something body. And it's not good. It's not, it doesn't come together. It doesn't cohesively fit into what they're trying to do. And really, the only reason it exists is so that you can have a backstory with Mads Mikkelsen. It's really not to introduce Indiana Jones in a new light. It's to give you Mads Mikkelsen as a compelling villain character that you can latch onto later on in the film. And this movie's supposed to be about Harrison Ford. It's supposed to be his swan song. It's supposed to be the thing that he's being sent off with, and they're sending him off with video game level CGI. It's just it's a little off-putting to me. I didn't necessarily hate the scene, but it didn't do it for me. I didn't think it was well made. I didn't think it was well shot. I didn't think it was a good way to start the film. It starts it off on the wrong foot, and it takes pretty much the rest of the movie to try to recover. And that's not a way to start a film. You don't start off a swan song on the wrong foot with an over CGI'd flashback. And so no, I'm not going to sing this movie's praises. I'm not going to sing this scene's praises just because it's Harrison Ford and James Mangold. It didn't. I didn't feel like it set the proper tone for an Indiana Jones film.
Matt, there was no CG involved with the opening of Halloween Kills. That was all prosthetic and makeup. So entirely different beasts. They wouldn't have had the budget to do what Lucasfilm and Disney just did. I think one of the things that stands out to me, Zach, about that scene is we've all seen at least most of us have seen the Indiana Jones trilogy, right? And when you go back in time in this movie, or you start back in time, you have Harrison Ford there, but we know what Harrison Ford looked like back then. And they're not taking what he looked like back then. It goes in with the technology, obviously. They're doing the same thing they did with Luke. But again, like his whole facial structure is just a younger version of what it is today. It is not what it was back then. And yes, that's nitpicking, but it is further proof that if you're going to do something like this, the tech needs to be there. And at the moment, I just don't think it is. And also, the whole reason that scene is nighttime is they're trying to hide the flaws in the CGI, because if it was in daylight, it would show even more.
Yeah, you cast it in the shadows, and you keep them kind of out of the quote unquote spotlight, and you can shade the face a little bit more. You can hide it a little bit more. And to some people it's fine. Wayne in the chat says that I love the opening scene. That's great. I'm excited. I'm happy for you, Wayne, because there's definitely plenty of things about this movie to enjoy, and I hope that by me saying this, that it doesn't deter people from listening to the rest of our thoughts, because there are things about this film that I enjoyed. This opening scene just wasn't the highlight for me. That's all. That's a fair thought, though, from Steven. Thor: Love and Thunder definitely had some visual complications. I don't know if these things are on par with each other, but it's a fair comparison considering what's been out recently.
Yeah, one of my other issues with this movie, and I appreciate the effort that they make, is the chase scenes that are happening. I know we get chase scenes in Indy in other movies, but if you look at them structurally and how they go down, they're not the way that they are in this movie. This movie, it feels like James Mangold is trying to do something from one of the newer Bond movies or Mission Impossible. And it's okay, but it's not those movies. It's not coming off the way those movies do. And so that for me, I don't hate the movie. It's not a terrible movie. It's just not a movie that I would pay to see again. And I was hoping for more, because this probably is Harrison's last movie as Indiana Jones. Could I see them doing something 6 or 7 years from now where he's not the main character, but Indiana Jones pops up in it? Yeah, I could totally see that. But I I was hoping for more, and ultimately didn't get it. But you know who does impress me in almost everything he does? Boyd friggin' Holbrook. He was fantastic in Logan. Loved him. And I thought he was really good in this movie too. I didn't think he was given enough to work with, frankly.
Who is Holbrook play?
I will pull him up. I don't remember the character's name in the movie, which is probably not a good sign.
Oh man. Is he one of the muscle characters? Is he one of the spies?
He's like the number 2. He was in Logan.
He's the goon. He's the one that's got like the mechanical hand in Logan, right?
Yeah.
The blonde haired dude. I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, he was good in this movie, but frankly, and I think his acting, he reminds me of that guy you and I used to talk about that was in the Punisher series as the villain. I don't remember the guy's name, but anyways, he has great acting range. I just think sometimes people aren't given enough to do. Like Antonio Banderas is a really good actor and had dick all to do in this movie.
Yeah,
Gwendolyn Christie, and frankly, it's the same friggin' company.
Yeah. I mean, we've had plenty of tangents about Gwendolyn Christie and her lack of use in the Star Wars franchise. So I'll definitely be in agreement with you on that. I think one of the interesting things about this film is the fact that they try to explain away where certain characters are, because at the end of Crystal Skull, we're led to believe that the hat / baton is being passed over to Mutt, and you see a wedding sequence. So where the hell is Marion? And so to see him looking at divorce papers, and to hear the newscaster talk about the loss of his son, gives you some sense of what's happened to Indy over the recent years, and it's not happy stuff. The man has lost his family. He's retiring from his job. He doesn't go on many adventures anymore. He's not in touch with a whole lot of people anymore. It's not a great quality of life that the man is living when we finally catch back up to him. And it's kind of sombering to see that somebody who has gone on so many great adventures is still ending up alone towards the tail end of his life.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably something that a lot of people can sympathize with, and frankly, when you get into those later years of life, that's something that people have to deal with. Obviously, the loss of a child, despite them not knowing one another most of Mutt's life, is devastating. It'll tear apart the best of families. So that part of the storyline, I appreciate it. I didn't have anything wrong with Harrison Ford's performance, and frankly, he played a guy that seemed like he was depressed, and he should have been.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And it creates an interesting dynamic when Helena finally pops up in his life. I think there are certain times where in his lecture he's impressed with her, but then when he actually has the one-on-one conversation, he's a little less impressed and a little more apprehensive. But it's kind of been the MO of his character, and it's not really a part of his character that they have delved into and had specific dedicated scenes for. It's just been a part of who he is. And sometimes, like in Crystal Skull, Marion just kind of pops up out of nowhere, and you're like, "Oh, hello, she's here now." But you kind of realized that he ditched her at the altar, and he's like, it wouldn't have worked anyways. But to actually hear him have those conversations with Helena, to actually hear him open up and get vulnerable about his marriage, about his son dying, about how hard it is to watch Basil go crazy over the dial. There's a lot of things about his relationships that make you realize that, maybe it's not all his fault. I don't know if I'm expressing myself clearly, but in the previous films, it seems like he had always just been the guy that keeps everybody at bay for fear of commitment or what have you. But when he finally does open himself up, like when he gets married and when he, starts warming up to his son and stuff, what happens? His son dies and his marriage falls apart. So I have a hard time completely blaming Indy for his solitude because it was some really crappy circumstances that led to it there. And it's understandable that he would be apprehensive to try to, restart any kind of working or personal relationship with Helena, given his track record, given the history of what it's been like to open up to people.
Another thing I liked about the film is the dynamic between the two. I was really worried they were going to be almost forcefully pushed into being buddy right out of the gate, and the other one's the sidekick or whatever, and they didn't do that. I think Helena's character stands on her own, frankly, and I thought the performance was very well done in the movie as well. So I like the way they approached that relationship with. And look, hey, speaking as a guy who has had relationship fallouts with other people, it can be tough and it can make you cynical and paranoid when it comes to situations like that. Add in the loss of a child too, and the loss of your marriage. Yeah, you're probably one of the most cynical people walking the earth, and rightfully so.
Yeah. Yeah. Touching on Helena's character for a second here, though. I think she's annoying as fuck. I did not like Phoebe Waller-Bridge all that much. I thought she was rude, she was brash, and I did not believe her character arc as much as I thought I would by the end of the film. She does have a time towards the final act where she kind of comes around a little bit, but for like 2/3 of the movie, 70% of the movie, she is very hell-bent on being in control of the situation and going after the profits when it was it was so boorish and over the top leading up to that point that by the time she finally comes around, I didn't really believe it. And so, Steven with the jokes again. Um, bridge too far. I don't dislike Phoebe Waller-Bridge. I think it has everything to do with the way her character was created. I think they had a hard time discerning whether she was supposed to be a rogue that was using Indy or if she was genuinely reaching out to her godfather for assistance and he was resisting. I don't think they really got that story element put together the way it needed to, and by the time they did have it figured out, it was a little bit too late. So I am worried that the more I watch this film, the more annoyed I'm going to get with Helena's character. I don't necessarily hate her character. That's a really strong word, but I I did not necessarily care for it, and there were times where I actually thought that the dialogue and the dynamic that Indy had with Mutt in Crystal Skull was better than the dynamic that he's got with Helena in parts of this movie.
Man, and there's my problem right there. Is the only reason we didn't get a legitimate Indian Mutt movie because Shia LaBeouf? Because Lucasfilm has this thing where they really try hard not to recast people, regardless of the role. And it just really freaking gets to me, man. Because I think, like, I sit here and I go, did they make this movie to give Harrison Ford the send off he wanted? If people need to backtrack a little bit, Harrison Ford was signed on to do this movie when he signed on to do The Force Awakens. It was a matchup deal. He wasn't doing Star Wars without the guarantee of another indie movie. And sorry, Zach, go ahead, take it.
Yeah, no problem. That's something that I was going to touch on as well. So I'm glad that you brought it up. He straight up said like he wanted it in his contract that he wasn't going to come back to be Han Solo if he couldn't come back to be Indiana Jones. So this is something that has been 8 years in the making even before that. I mean, when was it that Disney bought Lucasfilm? It was like 2012, wasn't it?
Yeah, Harrison Ford
So
would have signed on during 2013. 10
yeah,
years.
so this is something that has been in the works for the better part of a decade, and this is what we have to show for it. I think that's where I had the issue is there was all of this hype, all of this buildup, all of this time that was taken, all of these delays, all of these reshoots, all of this editing, all of this stuff that has been in the works for a decade. And this is what we have to show for it. I wasn't expecting a Last Crusade. I wasn't expecting a Raiders of the Lost Ark, but I also didn't think I would find myself missing Mutt at points in the movies. Like that's kind of a tough pill to swallow as I'm watching these dialogues, I'm watching these exchanges, and I'm going, man, I miss Shia LaBeouf. That's a sucky thing to say, man.
Yeah, and again, it's like, did you make this movie simply because you're contractually obligated to do so, and you're trying to keep your promise to Harrison, or did you set out to make a good Indiana Jones movie? And I hate to say it, but I think I believe hey, we got to make this movie, so let's pick the best story we can come up with, rather than, hey, we have a badass idea for an Indiana Jones movie. Should we go and do it? And they have another franchise that seems to be heading down similar paths at times. But I don't know. Like, there's people that think Indy's over now and that they won't go back there. And I don't think that. I think when you pay billions of dollars, and this is one of the properties included in it, you're going to do something with that IP. Just might not be Indiana Jones necessarily. It might not be Harrison Ford, but I believe there's more to come.
So do you think like Indiana Jones is going to become more of a title rather than an actual person? Or
Well,
are
I
we
I
are
hope.
we gonna go from Indiana Jones to um Illinois Shaw or something? I like like what the hell are we gonna do? Like even like my childhood. This is gonna be a deep cut, and I'm kind of ashamed to admit this. Um, there's a Christian kids series that I watched growing up called Veggie Tales, and they made a spoof of Indiana Jones and called him Minnesota Cuke. And the MacGuffin in the show was Noah's umbrella.
That's hilarious considering there was supposed to be an Indiana Jones movie with the whole Noah's Ark thing. So
Yeah. And honestly, it probably would have been better than going after a mathematical dial that nobody had heard of.
yeah,
Like that's the other thing. The MacGuffin. The MacGuffin is always one of the big points of the storyline. And I think the thing that made Raiders and Last Crusade so successful was they had some sort of a biblical oriented MacGuffin. And I'm not necessarily saying that it's the Christians that are going to watch Indiana Jones so they can see their, historical fiction come to life, but there was something different. There was something spiritual. There was something dynamic about having the Ark of the Covenant be the thing that everybody's searching for. To have the same chalice that Christ drank from be the thing that you're searching for, and having, you know, Knights of the Round Table being the thing that guards it. Like you're now incorporating other pieces of history and mythology into, something else that had a bit of history and mythology to it. I feel like Archimedes' dial was a safe bet MacGuffin. In this particular cultural climate, I don't feel like Disney or Lucasfilm felt safe doing anything else, because Archimedes' dial is based on mathematics. It's based on mythology. It's not based on any kind of spiritual background. It has nothing to do with cults like in Temple of Doom, and it has nothing to do with Christianity like the other two films, but it also has nothing to do with aliens, which also wasn't very well received in the fourth movie. The MacGuffin in this movie is very safe. And it's tough to get on board with a safe MacGuffin when Indiana Jones has always been a character that takes risks.
Yeah, I agree with basically everything you just said. Not to make a conversation boring, but like it is safe, and not to jump on the Lucasfilm hate. Like, look, if you're tuning into the show and you want me to sing the praises of the studio that I actually do love more than any other studio out there, just for the sake of doing it, it's not going to happen. I believe in holding entertainment and anything accountable. And there's just a lot of laziness that's done here. And I do think they played it safe. And I do think there's a bunch of other things that they could have done differently. You know what I actually thought this film was missing when I left the theaters? I'm sure this would get criticized to no end by a lot of people. Is this film felt like it was missing George Lucas and Steven Spielberg. There, there was, say what you want, even the fourth film. You just mentioned it with the Mutt and Indy dynamic, and once Marion gets involved, there's this back and forth and fun little banter that is in all of the Indiana Jones movies, and I don't feel like it's present in this movie at all. And people bash George Lucas, but guess what? George Lucas wrote these things. Guy knows a thing or two.
It was originally the love child of two of the greatest filmmakers of our generation. And that's not a knock on Mangold. We've seen his body of work. There is
I love
nothing wrong
Mangold.
with Mangold as a creator. It has nothing to do with Mangold, but he's not Steven Spielberg. He's not George Lucas. And he's never going to be. As much as we appreciate his stuff and as much as we love what he's capable of, I feel like there was probably just a very high expectation. And even with tempered expectations, like I wasn't trying to say that I need this to be the next Raiders of the Lost Ark. I knew going in it wasn't going to be the next Raiders of the Lost Ark. But the more that I talk about it, the more I think about all of the stuff that stood out to me on the wrong end instead of having the opportunity to talk about the stuff that was really great in this movie. And I'm definitely going to try to touch base on those things as we land this plane, because there were some really cool elements and some really cool shots and some really cool conversations and interactions and dynamics. And I really want to talk about those things more than I talk about the negatives so that we can finish this discussion on a high note, because right now it feels like we hated this movie.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't hate. Let's see, I disagree completely with that. I don't think that we're talking about this as if we hated this movie, but movies should be
But
held
what
accountable.
positive thing have we talked about?
Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford was excellent in this movie with what he got to do. I absolutely think Ford was fantastic. The time traveling scene at the end, it felt like, oh hey, there's a plane flying into Game of Thrones for a second, and that's the exact reaction I had. I'm like, oh, okay, they're actually doing this, because I wasn't sure they were going to actually get there. I thought they were going to end up somewhere weird. I didn't think they were going to get to Hitler. I didn't think they were getting there. I mean, we did Aliens in the last film, so who the hell else knows what they could have done?
Right.
But there's a lot of good in this movie. The cinematography in this movie is fantastic, man. John Williams' score, I feel, leaves a little to be desired. And yeah, no, sorry, I'm out on. I've been out. Let me know when Williams does something beneficial to any of his most recent movies. It's okay to, like, they just passed this movie off to James Mangold. Why did James Mangold get this movie? Logan, Ford versus Ferrari. They're the two main reasons he was brought in to do this movie. Why can't we go in and get a different composer? The guy is 90. There's a lot of recycling happening. It's not just me saying it. There's a ton of people saying it online. Why can't Indy get new themes like the prequels got? There's nothing wrong with bringing in new blood. So yeah, I mean, I didn't hate the movie, but for me, it was a popcorn flick. It was, hey, it was a movie that I go to Blockbuster or Jumbo Video or what's the one down there, Hollywood.
It used to be called Hollywood. Yeah. Doesn't exist anymore.
Oh, that one's close too. For some reason, I thought that one was still around.
No, there's one Blockbuster left in Oregon, and that's pretty much it. Hollywood also closed down. I think there was another one nearby me that was called Entertain Mart, and that one closed up shop. couple of years ago. So pretty much all that's left is one Blockbuster in Oregon, and then what is it, movie trading company or something like that, but that's more of a store than a rental.
And we got some like mom and pop shops up here that are like mixed in with corner stores and stuff. But I don't know. The cinematography for me was great, but the cinematography seems to be always great in James Mangold's films. I didn't do enough research to know if he uses the same cinematography on cinematographer like a lot of people do on various projects. Availability matters, obviously, in regards to that. But the cinematography, Harrison Ford, I'm the opposite side of you. I thought Phoebe Waller-Bridge was really good in this movie and was very different. But hey, look, if here, let's peel back the curtain a little bit. We've already recorded episode 2, okay, of this show. And that's Zach already said it off the top. That's how we have to do it. We meet up every 2 weeks, we record two episodes and put them out. If a movie deserves to be slaughtered, it's going to get slaughtered. If the movie deserves to be somewhere in the middle of the road, like I think this one is, like I like the opening sequence. I just don't think the CG works. I don't. And I also thought the part where he's hanging was extremely unbelievable. It was hard to suspend my belief there. But I enjoyed what it did, and I love train sequences. Like that's, you give me a train sequence and I'm on board. I'm a sucker for train sequences. But yeah, dude, I'm as 50-50 on this movie as you could possibly be, and my score will reflect that.
So I'm going to touch on some of the things that I did enjoy, because what's funny is I didn't care much for Phoebe Waller-Bridge. I really loved the John Williams music. I think the sound and the music are going to be some of the highest things that I score in this film, because it was the one thing that felt truest to Indiana Jones, was the film score. And yeah, some of it was rehashed, but it was the stuff that felt the most like what Indiana Jones was supposed to feel like, and drew a lot of emotion from me. I emoted a lot when I heard different film themes play. So I really enjoyed the music, and I'll agree with you on the cinematography, because the shot selection in this film is fantastic. And I'm going to tell you about a few of the scenes that I also really loved. The chase scene in the parade was probably one of my favorite scenes of the movie. It felt very Indiana Jones, but it also felt very unique. It felt like something we had never seen before in this franchise. It was different, and it was a fun ride. It was enjoyable to see how the escape would take place and what the repercussions of that would be. I also thought that the diving sequence was really great, because we have seen so many different versions of Indiana Jones being afraid of snakes. We've seen him with the asps in Raiders. We saw the young version of him with a snake during the opening sequence of Last Crusade. There's been so many instances where, or even in Crystal Skull, he has to grab a snake in order to get pulled out of the quicksand. They have done so many things with snakes, but then they send him into the water and he has to deal with eels that are basically giant swimming snakes. That was clever. I thought it was cool that they took the snake trope and took it a different direction that was still cleverly incorporated into the film, still triggers Indy's PTSD, but does it in a different way, telling the story, telling something that is true to his character, but telling it differently. I respected and appreciated the creativity of those two scenes.
I got 2 things I'd love to know your take on. First being Karen Miller, who originally had a bigger role in this movie, but as they got closer to shooting it, it was reduced. What did you think of that? Did you think that there was not enough Marion? I felt like it was kind of forced in at the end there. Not to say I didn't want to see her. I wanted to see more of her, frankly, given what the story being told was. And I've forgotten the second thing, so let's stick with the Marion bit.
Well, we can definitely start with that. I think, considering they were getting a divorce and considering they were separated, it made sense that she wouldn't be around all that much. And it was a way of helping to land the plane. Like, I think that's really the only main purpose that it was trying to serve, was like, hey, we're coming to the end of all this, and this is how I'm letting you know that we're coming to the end of all this, is Marion is showing back up to help us land the plane, to help us bring it all home. I would have to see the other scenes that she's in order to kind of determine if they missed out on her bigger role. But her appearance and John Rhys Davies' appearances were okay with me. I didn't think we needed Sala to be going along with Indy on another adventure, but to be helping him, to be assisting him, even if it's just a ride to the airport and some tidbits of information that help advance the plot, I think that was appropriate. It was just enough Sala for us to have a little bit of emotion, but it wasn't so much that it's like, okay, why is this old grandpa going off on another adventure with this other grandpa age character? Like, I felt like they struck a decent balance with both of those characters, because this is Harrison Ford's send off film, and you don't need necessarily an ensemble cast of everybody to help you land the plane. And Sala and Marion show up at the end to help you finish things off, to help him, end things on the proper note and give you the closure that you need / want. And they serve their purpose.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I don't know. I would like to see either Marion in a little bit more, or not at all, to be honest. The scene just came across a little awkward. The end of the movie, help me out here, because I've only seen it one time.
Yeah, so have I.
Is Boyd? Pardon me. I don't know his name in the movie. Is Boyd Holbrook still alive when the plane goes down? Because I see Mads is burned alive. They show him, but I could have swore they showed Boyd's character almost being dragged away by the whoever they were there. Well, 2,000 years before.
I am not sure, but I did kind of appreciate the little Easter eggs that they kind of preemptively put in the film, because like Jesse said in the chat earlier, it's a kind of a closed loop timeline type of thing. This is the way it's always supposed to have been, and this is the way that it's going to go. But to have Archimedes wearing a watch to kind of help show the plane crashing, and he picks up the watch, and to have that be a part of his grave, it's like, oh, this is where it all comes to play. He finds the watch from the crashed ship. He finds the dial and is able to complete it. And it's all because these guys used the dial to time travel. So to have your fate solidified like that, you were always meant to find it. You were always meant to go back in time. You were always meant to leave that watch behind so that you could discover it in Archimedes' grave somewhere at some other point in your adventures. I thought that was clever.
I did appreciate the part right before they go through whatever the vortex thing there, where Jones is like, yeah, no, you don't know where the hell you're going. We don't know where we're going to end up here. And he's laughing about it. But my favorite part about that is Mads Mikkelsen, who is calm and collected the entire fucking movie, loses it. Like, he finally realizes, oh no, what have we done? And it's too late at that point. But yeah,
he's very confident in his decision making. He's very sure that he would be able to control something that seemed to have been beyond human control up until that point. He was very confident in his calculations, very confident in his math, which was interesting to see, because I think part of what caused the Nazis to fall in the first place was their pride. they were more confident in their abilities than they turned out to be. And part of um what made Voller so easy to dislike was that he was so sure that he could do things better than Hitler, that he was a Nazi extremist willing to go back and kill his own Führer so that he could do better than the man before him. Like, that is the epitome of a warped mindset. And it made him a good villain. I don't really have any complaints with Mickelson or Voller. I just am truly bummed that he's being portrayed as another villain type character. I feel like that's pretty much all he's been typecast as outside of like Rogue One, perhaps. And I'd like to see him try to flex his acting chops at some point.
Yeah, I can see that. I can also see. Yeah, I don't want him to end up like Liam Neeson is now, but like you watch Hannibal over again, the TV series. It's like, my God, it's Academy Award winning level of acting. So, but yeah, I'm always up for Mads trying new things for sure.
Well, this has been a very lengthy discussion, but I think we're finally ending it on some high notes and some positives, some good takeaways from it. I will say the other thing that I kind of appreciated, I don't know if I necessarily liked Ethan Isidore in particular, but I liked the Teddy character, because as much as Helena wants to deny that she is very much like her father and wants to deny that she's very much like Indy, she has her own little sidekick character that is basically what Short Round was to Indy in Temple of Doom. Like, it's meant to be a parallel saying, hey, I know that you're different, but you're not that different from me.
Yeah, I enjoyed the dynamic between the two. I don't think he got as much to do as Short Round did, but I enjoy. Honestly, the best part of this movie for me is the acting. I don't have a problem at all with the acting in this movie. I think it's very, very well done. There's just other areas that I'm not high on.
Well, maybe we should talk about those areas as we bring out how we score things here on Flixbusters. I kind of talked about it a little bit, saying that we've got some very specific criteria, and those elements are creativity, quality, sound, and our enjoyment factor. I think you may have mistaken the quality number, sir, because I've got a different number than what you've got put there. But when it comes to creativity, it is about the story, the writing, and the characters. How original is the story? How fun is it? How creative is it? Was it well written? Do the character arcs play out well? When it comes to quality, we're talking about production. We're talking about set design. We're talking about the acting, the directing. When it comes to sound, we're talking about sound design. We're talking about the soundtrack. We're talking about the film score. And then we have a bonus element with 25 possible bonus points for just how much we enjoyed this film. And when you add it all up together, it's a possible 100 points based on the scale from these four criterion, and then we aggregate it together between the two of us. So my creativity score for this film out of 25 was 17. I talked about how the Dial of Destiny was probably not one of my favorite MacGuffins, didn't really care for it. The writing was all right, the character arcs were all right, but I think Helena's character took too long to develop and wrap up. And so the timing of the character arcs is something that I had to give them a knock for. But the production quality, the directing, even the acting was pretty good. So, I probably am not opposed to it being a 20, but I think I had it a little bit lower in the notes that I had originally taken. But it's not low quality. It's just kind of middle of the road quality for me. But I did have pretty high marks for the sound. The sound design was really well done. And John Williams' score was probably one of my favorite pieces of the film. The way that they wrapped things up and wrapped it up with his original music, it all tied it up in a neat little bow at the end that gave me closure and made me feel like, okay, if this is the last Indiana Jones Harrison Ford film that I see, I'm okay with that. And the music really helped me kind of have that closure. And as much as I had these nitpicks here and there that I talked about tonight, my enjoyment factor is still a 20 out of a 25 possible points. I did really enjoy this film. I did have a fun time watching it. I got to go watch it with my dad, and he doesn't go to a lot of movies with me, and so it was fun having some father son time and going to a new theater. He loved the theater that we went to. It was a dine-in with recliners and great service. There was something that was friendly to his diet that he said tasted amazing. So, sometimes it's the stuff that's not just on the screen. It's some other things as well. And so looks like we've got the quality number adjusted here, which is really cool. I'm grateful that you're able to fix it on the fly like that, dude. That's pretty cool. I gave a 17 out of 25 for creativity, a 17 out of 25 for quality, 22 out of a possible 25 for sound, and my enjoyment level was 20 out of 25. So all in all, I give Dial of Destiny a 76 out of a possible 100 points.
Must have been a typo because literally the other ones are fine. Once you see the combined score. So
no problem. No problem.
All right. Mine, creativity I had at 15. I think there's some positive things. I think there's a lot of negative things. I honestly don't think necessarily I refuse to watch Ford versus Ferrari and Logan and go, James Mangold's the problem. And just so we're clear, don't read into that as me saying Kathleen Kennedy's the problem either, because if I thought she was the only problem, I would come out here and say it. I just think they're in a weird spot where a lot of their projects are coming in less than expected. And I think Zach hit the nail on the head here earlier, where having realistic expectations for this movie was important. I wasn't coming into this thing expecting it to be Raiders of the Lost Ark or The Last Crusade. I basically said, hey, if this ends up my third or fourth favorite indie film, I can live with that. And I'm not sure. It definitely isn't my third, and it might not be my fourth either. So I'm a little bummed out, but it still gets passing grades. It's not a terrible film. It's too long. There's it drags at times, but there's a lot of good things here. All the villains, I think, are really good in this movie, despite them going back to Nazis again. I think the acting's fantastic in the movie. Like I mentioned, the action pieces aren't as big as, or as effective as a Bond film or Mission Impossible, but they still have some of the better action pieces I've seen in indie. So I really appreciate that. And I appreciate everybody having patience tonight. I know we've run long and run some tech issues, but that happens in the first couple episodes. We'll clean it up as we go here. But it brings our overall scores to this, Zach.
76 out of a possible 100 from me, 55 out of a possible 100 from Shawn. Brings us to an aggregated Flixbusters score of 65.5%, which is not far off from what the tomato meter has it for. So I think we're pretty much in line with what the overall agreement is for this film. And it's really cool to see that there are a lot of people that really, really love it. And it's really cool to see that there are people who have qualms with it as well. Steven in the chat says he really wants to give it an 8.5 out of 10. Think it's my second favorite film, fourth favorite if we include Goonies and Tintin. Come on, man. But it's a very interesting dynamic to look at where this film goes and where it ranks for other people. I currently have it right in the middle. I have it higher than Crystal Skull because I have a lot of issues with Crystal Skull. And I have it higher than Temple of Doom, but I don't have it as high as Raiders or Last Crusade. So I think it goes Raiders, Crusade, Dial, Skull, and Doom for me. So it's right down the middle. I don't have Flixbusters scores for any of the other films, but I can basically use this as the template and kind of build around from it. based on the 76 that I gave this one.
Yeah, so for me, I like Last Crusade's number 1. Number 2 is definitely Raiders of the Lost Ark. Number 3 for me, believe it or not, is Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I don't hate that movie as much as most people do. My thing is, do I like Dial of Destiny better than Temple of Doom? I'm not sure. If I gave an answer right now, I might change a week from now. They're pretty lined up.
That's fair. Well, like you said, this one ran a little bit long, but I think it's okay because we had some really great discussions and we had some great input from the folks in the chat. Future live episodes will not be this long, however, but we wanted to kick it off with a really fun and lively inaugural episode. And I think we did that and talked about a really relevant and really pertinent part of pop culture. So I'm going to take the wins where we can get them and look forward to what we've got next. Like Shawn said, we've done an episode on Titanic that's going to be coming out in the near future as well. And then we've got a really great slate of other things that we're going to be talking about. Some of it is going to be Harrison Ford related again. So you've got plenty to look forward to in that respect as well. Thanks to everybody that did join us live in the chat. If you're not live, then go ahead and submit a comment and let us know what you thought of the film, and be sure to go follow us on the social media pages at Flixbusters on Twitter. I think we're building a Facebook page. You can also join Fandom Empire on Facebook as well. You can use the hashtag FlixPix, and for exclusive content that is yet to be determined, you can also go to patreon.com/Fandom Empire. But I think, Shawn, unless you have any other thoughts, we're going to go ahead and conclude the inaugural episode of Flixbusters.
No, I just want to say I appreciate everybody coming out and participating. And I know there's been a lot of changes at the channel and branding and stuff. It's still Fandom Empire, but Flixbusters is kind of like our flagship show going forward. And looking forward to doing so much here with Zach and everybody else involved.
A big thank you to our producers, Randy, Matt, and Shannon. We appreciate all of the stuff that you all do behind the scenes to help make this show possible, including being chat mods and helping us promote the stuff and edit the stuff after we're done. Could not do this show without you all as well. But I think that's going to be it for this inaugural episode. Thank you all for being a part of this episode 1 of many. Let us know if you think this movie is a flick or a bust. Our aggregated score of 65.5% is just below that 70% threshold that we try to have for flicks. Kind of in that mid-range. I don't know if I would necessarily call this movie a bust, but it is definitely highly debated. So kind of a fun way to kick off this program. But looking forward to discussing more flicks and more busts moving forward. But for now, and for Shawn, I'm Zach. We'll see you next time right here on Flixbusters.